this show on the road here. So pretty much everybody knows me, but in case you don't, I'm Ismael Ray Reyes, and welcome to the Greater Central Florida Multifamily Investor Group meeting for March. We focus on learning from each other, primarily learning new things, and also helping each other do deals, whether we're trying to partner with people in Central Florida that are going elsewhere to find deals, or whether it's people wherever they're at partnering to do deals in Central Florida. So both of those are good. But ultimately what it comes down to is we want to make sure that we all invest where it makes sense, whether it's here or somewhere else. Without further ado, let me go ahead and introduce Brian Bigham. He is the Associate Vice President for Madison Specs, which is a division of Madison Commercial Real Estate Services. In 2017, he joined the team there at Madison as Vice President for Business Development for the Cost Segregation Department at Madison Specs, and he has spoken at over 65 events in the last 3 years, bringing awareness and education to the highest levels of tax-related benefits. And just a little bit more on Madison Specs. It is a company that's done over 16,000 cost segregation studies in all 50 states, saving over $2 billion with a B in accelerated tax depreciation. So that's all I got on this end. Brian, go ahead and please take charge here. I gave you sharing rights, so you can get right in there.
All right, let me see if everybody can see my screen. Tell me if this is working. Are we good? Thumbs up. Everything's
good.
Showing?
Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. Brian Bigham. I'm in Texas. And, he was talking about some people are going to come in late and from the Florida crew, but in Texas, if we're early, we're on time. If we're on time, we're completely late. Don't even bother showing up. So it actually works out. But, and the new people, remember, this is your first time here. Next time you have to speak for 45 minutes on a presentation on what you do. So this is, exactly what you need. But like I said, I came to the company about 4 years ago. Before that, I've been in commercial real estate about a decade, doing offices, subleasing, pre-leasing, marketing. I've been in real estate since right out of college. And I've loved it. Real estate is one of those fun $1 million, $1 billion games that, you do the best you can. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. And, when I came to Madison Specs, they basically told me, look, we want you to deal with tax depreciation and how people can save millions upon millions of dollars by just investing in real estate. And I was thinking to myself, wait a second, you mean I can take a job where I can basically help and educate commercial real estate investors on all ends, and I can be against my most hated enemy, the IRS, at the same time? I'm in. Let's do it. Don't even talk about terms. Let's just do it. Basically, we're going to talk about cost segregation, depreciation, bonus depreciation, how it affects you and as an investor, whether active, passive. I'm always just rambling on. Let me see if, all right, there we go. All right, so here's what we're going to be talking about. Depreciation, cost segregation, the benefits. Bonus depreciation is such a hot topic right now with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 when former President Trump was in office. And now everybody's always asking me what's going to happen next. So I'll kind of tell you what we're hearing down the pipeline. What's a real estate professional? Why does that matter? I'll give you a case study just to better give examples so everybody can kind of follow along. I got to tell you right from the get-go, I'm a big metaphor guy. I like making, the taxes like visually, so everybody can follow along on that. All right. Depreciation. A lot of people, what is depreciation? Best way to describe it is wear and tear, guys. Think of it like this. I have an iPhone 10 right now. Back in the day, I had the original iPhone 3, I think it was called. Let's say, for instance, I had that iPhone 3 for the last 5-6 years. I've used it. It's got a cracked screen. It's slow. The battery lasts maybe 5 or 6 minutes. And then I want to say, you know what? I want to take this old iPhone, original iPhone 3 with a cracked screen and everything going wrong with it, and trade it in for the brand new iPhone 11 with no upcharge. Do you think they would let you do that? Do you think the company would let you trade in an old iPhone for a new iPhone? No. And why? Because it's an older version. It's depreciated in value. It's basically the life expectancy has depleted because there are newer and better things years in the future. So that's the same concept with depreciation. There are things whenever you buy an asset, whenever you buy a property, the things on the actual asset depreciate or deplete in the life expectancy over time. All right. Now, the IRS basically gave a long-term life expectancy on different types of properties. For instance, there are two really, non-residential and residential. Over the course, if you buy a property today, March 15, 2021, starting today, if it's a apartment complex or a single family rental home or a manufactured housing community, those depreciate over the course of 27 and a half years. And I'll tell you why this makes a difference in just a second. If you're buying a retail property or a hotel or a strip center, something that's non-residential, it depreciates over 39 years, right? And the honest piece of it is you're going to get the same exact amount of depreciation every single year for either 27 and a half years or 39 years. That's that. You think to yourself, that's great. We get this thing, but we just bought this property. But really down the line, if you think about it, let's say year one, year two, you put in renovations, you're forcing appreciation, you're doing all kinds of improvements and raising rents. That exact number every single year is just not going to cut it down the line, which is why they came up with cost segregation. And, cost segregation, what you're basically doing is you're taking the physical assets on the property and simply reclassifying and moving them to what they're supposed to be in their life expectancy. You're not going to take a ceiling fan and say that ceiling fan's good for 27 and a half years. That's just not going to happen. IRS says, oh yeah, it's absolutely, you can average it out. No, I don't want to do that. I want to take it now instead of wait down the line. So give you kind of a quick example. You buy a property for $1 million. You always, always, always have to take out the land, guys. Now, typically across the board, it's usually 15% land value. Why do you have to take out the land on the purchase price? Because think of it as the land is always going to be there. If a tornado came and knocked the building down, the land will still be there. So you cannot depreciate land. It's there forever, for life. So what you do is you take that $1 million purchase price, take out 15% land value. That leaves you with what's called a depreciable basis. That's where it starts with the tax benefits, the tax losses, $850,000 in this example. So whenever you hear the term straight line depreciation, you're basically taking that basis, that $850,000, and dividing it by either 39 for non-residential or 27.5 for residential. Now you think to yourself, like, $21,000 per year every single year is great. $30,000 per year is great across the board. But what if you bought that property with 10 investors, or 20 or 30 or 40 down the line? That tax loss just continues to be saturated. It's diluted. There's multiple people taking a piece of it, and it's really not going to cut it if you're trying to increase income or lease out vacant spots that you had originally vacated. So the idea is, why take such a little amount every single year for the next 27 and a half to 39 years? That's where cost segregation comes in. So what we're basically doing is, just like I said, we reclassify actual assets on the property. I'll give you a few examples in just a second, but it basically allows us to break out all those components and front load them into a shorter life period. So you're taking things 20 or 30 years down the line, and then by reclassifying, you're moving them to years 1 through 5, or years 1 through 15, or years 1 through 27. By doing that, you are massively accelerating those tax losses, right? And that allows you to produce significant non-cash deductions, because when you're doing it is you're reclassifying it. You have all that extra money that you do not have to pay the government. And that's what I love. Anything you can do to stick it to the IRS, that's like my favorite day. So this is kind of a, easy example to follow. You've got the red graph is your straight line depreciation. That's what you get every single year for the next 27 and a half to 39 years. So you're basically taking that basis and you're dividing it by 27 and a half or 39. The blue is cost segregation. So if you can look all the way down the line, you see the blue is just constantly small little nuggets taken out of it, small bites taken out of it, and moved to the first 1 to 7 years, essentially, is like your big hot zone. 1 to 7 years, you're going to see a massive amount of tax losses, massive amount of deductions, depreciation. And this is so good for apartment investors in general because of the main formula. You buy a value add property, you spend years 1 through 2 or 3 putting in renovations, and every time you complete a unit, you're raising the rents, you're putting in higher paying tenants, and you're improving the appreciation. You're just getting money more. But you've got to keep the mindset, guys, of this is not about making money. This is not about making more income and earning a tremendous amount of wealth from this. It's about how much can you keep at the end of the day. Now, keep in mind that I'm also an investor myself. I love, I see deal, I run it, I do my underwriting, I do the cost segregation, I breakdowns and everything, and I will put that money in and invest it, and I will be sitting back happy in the Bahamas with you, Scott. So we're going to be good on that. So when I'm talking about assets on a property, I'm talking about the actual physical pieces of the property. So there are basically 3 main categories for residential properties. Let's just stick with apartments. I keep saying 27 and a half to 39, but let's stick with residential properties. There are 3 main parts of it. 5-year property. We usually call those like the interior side of it. So you think of any particular unit or office building or maintenance shed or anything, carpeting, appliances, millwork, ceiling fans, mirrors. I mean, even to go as far as number plates that are screwed onto the doors, those are actually depreciate over 5 years. But with straight line depreciation, you're taking the average of all those little pieces and moving them across a greater 27 and a half years. The 15-year property is exterior land improvements, such as carports or asphalt, paving, signage, retaining walls. Those are massive amounts of depreciation, things you don't really think about when you look at a property. As a matter of fact, now when I'm driving, by a property with my wife, she says, "Oh, look at that pretty building." I say, "Oh yeah, look at all that 15-year property. I'll tell it this and this." She said, "Please just say it's pretty." I'm like, "Okay, it's very pretty for tax purposes." So the whole concept of this is 5-year, 15-year, and the last one is 27 and a half year, which is your structural components, things that you cannot actually accelerate in depreciation. Even if you reclassified it, it would still remain years 1 through 27 and a half. And these are things like foundations, windows, walls, roofing, that type of thing, things that are actually structurally sound on the property that make it stand. So with that 5-year, 15-year, and 27 and a half year, I mean, reclassify all that, right? Years 1 through 5, you get that massive amount of front-loaded depreciation. 1 through 15, you get that the first 5 years and the next 10 years after that. So, I mean, it just, by doing all these reclassifications, you are massively accelerating all that depreciation. And this is what it does. I mean, it reduces your tax liability. Why? Because it's dropping the depreciation and the depreciation across the board. It increases your cash flow because you don't have to pay the government. You can put in your money into this property, your investment, and basically say, look, I'm putting this money in and everybody's talking about the tax benefits. Well, I can honestly say this is tax-free investing because I'm putting my money in. Any income I get from it is taxable, but I have this depreciation loss that allows me to get it back. It's the time value of money, guys, because I'm talking about front loading. You're putting all of this, this depreciation up front, and it's allowing all those tax losses to hit you during tax time. And in bonus depreciation, let's talk about bonus depreciation. All right, I always put this disclaimer in because I want everybody to know. You might think, I'm a certain political side, but I want to make sure we're not going to talk massive politics. I'm not on the left. I'm not on the right. I'm not. All right, I'm gonna try to play it here. Let's see if it'll go. Tell me if you can hear it on your end. Let's see. Oh, well, maybe not. Nope. Okay.
Maybe if you go to presentation form, I think you're just kind of you're not on presentation.
Let's see. How do I do that?
Yeah, I think right there where you had the mouse.
Right here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that's reader. Okay, yeah, it's the other one. But
just a 1 minute.
Or anything else, we can't prove it. You can look at our tax returns. We've got them all out there. But what is really troubling is that we learned in the last debate, he has not paid a penny in federal income tax. And we were talking about immigrants a few minutes ago, Chris. Half of all immigrants, undocumented immigrants in our country actually pay federal income tax. So we have undocumented immigrants in America who are paying more federal income tax than a billionaire.
You have a former sitting president that made his millions, billions in real estate, right? And everybody's talking. There were so many video clips, guys, by the way, especially in this last running. But I love that one because of actually he quickly explains it, and then later on he was told, "Look, don't explain that. There's half the population doesn't understand that." So the idea is, how does this billionaire make so much money in real estate but not pay a dime in taxes? And that's actually how I have to explain what I do for a living to most people. They say, "What do you do for a living?" I'm in taxes. Then they glaze over, and then I tell them, "Look, how Trump didn't have to pay any taxes? That's kind of what I do." Perfect. So my thought on this whole thing was watching this and understanding the concept of cost segregation, accelerated depreciation. This former sitting president basically, by doing this, not paying any taxes, I was saying to myself, why not enjoy the public? The public wants to enjoy that. Put your money where your mouth is, supposedly, for the American people. And that's when we came up with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. Bravo. So essentially, quick highlights on it. It's the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. It made a lot of changes in the individual income tax, which we've all enjoyed. It doubled the standard deductions, put new limitations on itemized deductions, allowing you to take more from the little guys now instead of later. It reduced income tax rates. We wish it was a lot more, but hey, little by little, it helps. And then made lots of reforms to several other provisions. But the big piece that came from this for us real estate investors was bonus depreciation. So everybody needs to remember the magic date, as I like to call it. Magic date is September 27, 2017. September 27, 2017, 9/27/17. Any commercial or income producing property bought after that date is eligible for bonus depreciation. And what is bonus depreciation? it allows you to take all of that 5-year property that I was talking about, the interior, the 15-year property, which is the exterior land improvements, instead of waiting 5 years or 15 years, it actually allows you to take it all in year one. So you think of straight line depreciation, right? Cost segregation spread out is, depreciation on steroids, and bonus depreciation is the, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Lance Armstrong, you name it, steroid version of cost segregation. By maximizing every single physical asset under a 20-year life, all the 5-year, 15-year, and putting it into year one, massive amounts of high net worth individuals can literally spread that $1 million across the board in tax losses if they wanted to. And, it's the beautiful thing about this is bonus depreciation, because you could take it in year one, you could quite literally close a property on New Year's Eve of 2020, and you can take all that bonus depreciation for the year 2020 on your 2020 taxes, because it all pushes into year one. It's all based on the placed in service, the close date. And this is just huge for real estate investors. So the only difference is with bonus depreciation, like why wouldn't everybody do it? Well, it's not allowed if you're buying and selling in the same year. That's the number one. A lot of people, a lot of flippers or wholesale and then sell off based on, stepped up bases or, appraisal values going through the roof. You cannot do bonus depreciation on a property bought and sold in the same year. So that's the big caveat to that. So, this is a beautiful, massive amount of, depreciation for you. Why don't we just do it forever? Because it won't be here forever. So I put this chart in here just to let people know that it does have a phase out period. So starting at the end of December 2022, so next year, at the end of next year, the bonus depreciation of 100% drops 20% to 80%. That's the max you can take is 80%. And then it drops every single year, 20%, 20%, 20% until it's gone. Surprisingly, or, coincidentally, those are during election years. So, and then I also have a lot of people ask me what's going to happen to bonus depreciation now that, there's a change in the presidency. And, we don't know. Honestly, there's a lot of proposals out there, but nothing is set in stone. I've heard from just about every high-end CPA there is, and most people think that because there's already a phase-out period, this might actually just stay, run its course. So it's a hurry up and see kind of situation. Now, who should do a cost segregation study, right? Well, damn near everybody should do it. If you're investing in real estate, through yourself, estates and trust, corporations, partnerships, LLCs, everybody should take advantage of the cost segregation, those massive amounts of tax depreciation benefits. Now, there are certain types of investing that is considered tax-free investing, such as IRAs, self-directed IRAs, or 401ks, or through the health insurance or life insurance. By investing in that, technically, you're not investing through yourself. You're investing through a third-party entity, which means you actually cannot take advantage of that depreciation, but it actually comes through that entity, which makes it technically tax-free. So there's no need to use that depreciation. So other than that, I would absolutely recommend it for everybody that's investing in real estate. I want to go over the two types of, investors, active real estate professional and a passive real estate investor. So why is there a difference? What makes that, beneficial? If you have the ability to become an active real estate professional, I very much recommend you do it. And why? It's because literally everything becomes active. Active gains, active losses. Active gains from real estate, from stock market, from a garage sale that you actually told the IRS, hey, I made $100 at this garage sale. Well, you're taxed on that. Congratulations. But because everything becomes active, your active losses could also affect your active gains. If you were to invest $100,000 in a piece of property and you were getting back, I don't know, $10,000, $15,000 back from that property, let's say you owed $10,000 in taxes through whatever, your W-2, the stock market from that investment. Well, now you can utilize that depreciation that you got from the cost seg or the bonus depreciation and completely offset all the taxes owed. Completely offset it. Millionaires are doing this, guys, with massive amounts of investment properties. They're able to offset all of that with depreciation from cost segregation. How do you become an active real estate professional? You basically have to meet two main categories. All right. The first one, which is surprising, and this is actually the hardest one, is 750 hours a year, a calendar year, involved in real estate, whether it's transactions, trading, closing, even education will technically do it. But the IRS requires you to actually have documented proof on this. So calendars, like a written calendar signed off or notarized. I've seen so many challenges happen from the IRS basically saying, look, you work a 60-hour job on your W-2, right? Yes. And you're saying you did 1,000 hours a year through real estate. Well, that means you get 2 hours of sleep a night if you do the calculations. So you have to do 750 hours involved in real estate during the calendar year. And the second one is 50% or more of your income, your yearly income, is involved in real estate, whether it's passive investing, whether it's active investing, whether you own 5% of a real estate company, situations like that. So you have to meet both, not either or, but both. And one cool thing about this is if you file jointly, if your spouse is an active real estate professional and you're not, let's say you're a doctor or a businessman and you're passively investing in deals. If your spouse is an active real estate professional, that means you are an active real estate professional because you filed jointly, and that's 50% or more of your income. So just little loopholes to know. If you're not an active real estate professional, it's okay. Passive real estate professionals still get massive amounts of depreciation based on their investments. If this is, let's say, your first time investing in a property, you put $50,000 into a property, you're going to get $10,000 back this year from the income level based on your ownership of the LLC. You have all that depreciation. You can utilize and offset all of that income based on just the depreciation. But if you're doing cost segregation, that's how you're able to do it. If you're doing bonus depreciation, same thing. Straight line depreciation might not cut it. That's how it breaks down. It's all about doing the math, breaking it down per investor to understand like what you're getting on the income side, but also what you're getting to be able to keep that income from the IRS. Stick it to the government, guys. It's how we do it. So I was like rambling on. Okay, so when is the best time to do a cost seg study, guys? I mean, you got anytime really. As soon as you buy a property, you can do cost segregation on that property. You can reclassify all the assets. Let's say you've owned a property for a year and you put in, $100,000 of renovations. Well, that's $100,000 of improvements, of added physical assets you're putting on the property. Why not do a second study on just the improvements? Because that's all added value. You've already captured the original acquisition. Why not capture the new improvements? Or let's say this is the first time you've ever heard of cost segregation, right? And you want to do the original purchase and the renovations you put in, in the last year. You can do that because it's all about the assets that are on site. If you do a newly constructed property, this is where the tax strategy method comes in. If it's a brand new development, you're placing it into service today, it's only 10% occupied. You have more losses than you do income on it the first year. You think to yourself, I don't need all that accelerated depreciation. Well, what if your investors are active real estate professionals? They could take the depreciation from that property, this new development property, and spread the wealth to whatever else is in their portfolio, right? it's all about making your investors happy, guys. Look back study. This again, let's say this is the first time you're hearing about cost segregation and you've owned a property for the last 3 years. Hey, no problem. You can actually do cost seg even as far back as the early 90s if you wanted to. It might not make sense if it was back in the early 90s, but there's no harm in it checking it out and seeing if it would be beneficial for you this new, calendar tax year. The idea is we basically will take that original purchase price with, make the basis, and any depreciation you've taken already, like we just take that out of the equation and that's it. Then you get the rest of the years down the line pushed forward. It's beautiful. So acquisition at the time of purchase, back in the day, in the future, you can do cost segregation anytime. So I was thinking to myself, we're missing something. There's got to be another thing that we can do with cost segregation. It's so powerful. And that's when I came up with the individual depreciation benefit, or IDB. All right. And this is what I love doing is, besides, sticking it to the, giving the IRS the middle finger, I love making sure every passive investor in, commercial real estate knows all about the tax loss benefits on a property. So I'll give you kind of a quick lowdown on this. Let's say you have a $10 million purchase tag on it. All right. You take out the land because land is not depreciable, which leaves you with a basis, $8.5 million basis. All right. Based on the split of the, passive investors in and the general partners and how much capital you have to raise, not, based on the lending terms, for $100,000 investment and cost segregation is 35%, which is 35% of that $8.5 million basis. 35% of it is 5 and 15-year property that you're allowed to actually move around and reclassify. $100,000 investment gets you 2.86% ownership. $77,000 or 77% of that you can take year one for bonus depreciation. Or let's say you don't need all that depreciation up front. Over the course of the next 5 or 6 years, $106,000. Wait a second. All right. You put $100,000 in, you're getting income from one side. Let's say they do a refinance, that's tax-free, return of capital for you. And then you're still getting income every single year. And then 6 years down the line, you say, well, I've got all my returns already in my pocket, but you're getting $106,000 of tax losses. That's over dollar for dollar that you put in, you're getting back in losses. That's why real estate investing is amazing for tax benefits, guys. And I love it. And this individual depreciation benefit, I freely share. Anybody has any questions about a property that they want to invest in, I will love to just talk to you, run the numbers for you, say, look, this is great. I came up with this because I'm also an investor. All right. Because I wanted to make sure that, every property I invest in, I get the income side, the really, really good income side and the massive tax losses side. So I can offset everything. And then this is a case study on, actually this was during my first year with the company. I contacted a gentleman, he bought a 3-story, apartment building in Fort Worth, Texas, $28.5 million. And it was his eighth purchase. So if he was doing straight line depreciation for the last few years, during his 7 other purchases. And if you take that price tag, take out the land and, divide it by 27.5, he's getting $932,000 annually, which you think to yourself, well, dang, that's just short of $1 million. Why is that a bad thing? Well, he has about 30 to 40 investors, which lowers the amount of depreciation allocated to everybody. So really the take home on it per investor was about 30, 40,000. And he has 7 other properties. That 932,000 is just not going to cut it the next year or the next year or the next year, however long he wanted to hold it. So we talked to him about cost segregation. And this is what we found. $28.5 million purchase price, we found it was only 10% land value. Okay, it's not just 15%. It's It could be 10% in some places in secondary markets, or I've even seen as low as 4% in rural areas. New York, California, that you might be a little bit higher than 15%. That's a pretty on-demand spot. But that left us with a $25.65 million basis. Most of the property's structural components equaled up to about 65% of that basis, 15-year property, 11% of that basis, and 24% of the 5-year property. That basically allowed him to take $8.895 million in depreciation tax losses. Okay, so $932,000 year one, 8.8 million. I'm going to do it again and then go back. Needless to say, he said, hey, Brian, I've got 7 other properties I want you to take a look at. Because the idea is, with all of his investors, if half of them were active, half of them were passive, himself, he wasn't active, you have the ability to spread it out, guys. Think of for active real estate, remember, I told you everything becomes active. Active gains, active losses. You're going to offset just about everything. For passive investors, think of it as a dam, right? You've got all of these passive losses from multiple investments that are just piling up on this dam, right? And they're just trickling out on the other end because you have a cap of what you can, depreciate, what income you can depreciate. But that dam, those losses never go away. They're still there. They're always going to be there. If somebody sold the property, 10 years down the line, that's still 10 years of tax losses that you can utilize, little by little. So even as a passive investor, everybody gets to take a piece of the pie, and it's beautiful. And then I've done these presentations so many times. I've always, I pretty much change it up probably every 3 or 4 months, and I always add new things in. So these are some of the questions I always get that I love to address right from the get-go. And one of my goals is one day I'm going to do a presentation where there's not going to be a single question except, how do I get started? Okay, I love that. So these are questions I get asked. Or somebody tells me, hey, my building is too old to benefit from a cost segregation report. That's a false. Think of it like this. It doesn't matter how old the building is. If the building is 100 years old and you bought it today, your depreciation starts today. It's all based on the placed in service date, not when the building was built, when you took ownership of it. If you have a 100-year-old building you bought today, your depreciation starts today. And then I would also tell you about the historical tax credits because it's a 100-year-old building. That's something totally different. My CPA does all the depreciation for my property. All right, that's true and false. The idea is your CPA does do the depreciation. He's the one that actually puts those losses into your individual tax returns. But for cost segregation purposes, the IRS actually wants you to do an engineered-based study. All right, why do they want that? Because they want it broken down what's physically on the property. The more details, the better. So you got to remember, to the IRS, we're not human beings. We are pieces of paper. We're gains, we're losses. They want to know what's on the property based on a piece of paper. And that's what we do. You want an engineer to break it down line for line, item by item, what's there. CPA, I love CPAs. I work with them. You could not do cost segregation without your CPA, based on the reports we give them. But I always use this example and I always get a nod from the CPA. If you use a CPA for a cost segregation study, think of it as throwing darts at a dartboard. You're going to hit the dartboard, but you're guesstimating how much a certain asset would cost. That's why the detailed engineering study is so beneficial to you. Doing a cost segregation will red flag me for an IRS audit. I said the word audit. Nobody likes to hear that. False. Just like I said, the IRS wants you to actually get a cost segregation done because it tells them what's on the property. They see the market. It allows them to do a market, a census, break it all down and put it, out there. What's the state of the market? Well, let's look at all the reports so we can break it down for you. So the cost segregation will not flag you for an IRS audit. What it will do is it will help you. It allows you to have detailed records to provide. And then the dreaded word, recapture. So let me break it down. A lot of people ask me why wouldn't everybody do this? What's the downside? Well, depreciation recapture is technically a downside. I like talking about it because I want to make sure everybody has all the information possible before they make assumptions. So depreciation recapture is when you go to sell a property, it is required by the tax law to any depreciation you've taken throughout the ownership of the property, you have to pay back a maximum of 25% of whatever depreciation you've taken throughout ownership when you sell it. So number one, I've never seen a single person pay 25% upon sale. The highest I think I've ever seen is 21%, and that was a year and 3-month ownership. The lowest I've ever seen is 1%. And the reason why they do this is because they don't want you to basically own a property, pay 0 taxes, and get out scot-free and just pay the capital gains taxes. They say, look, you're saving all this money. We want a piece of that. All right. The only way to avoid this is to sell it for less or die. And nobody wants either one of those. All right. So what I like to do is give a 10,000 foot example, 10,000 foot view of why you got to think in a different frame of mind when it comes to recapture. So take this example. You buy and sell a property in 5 years. During that time, you did straight line depreciation, which means you didn't do cost seg, you didn't front load everything. You took $100,000 of depreciation over the course of 5 years. Okay. You go to pay back the maximum amount, the 25% recapture. So $100,000, you pay back 25% of that, which means you only pay back $75,000 you pay back $25,000 for the recapture, which means you really only enjoyed $75,000 during that 5-year period. Okay, that's not bad. It's not bad, but cost segregation usually triples to quadruples the amount of depreciation during those same 5 years. Same property, buy and sell in 5 years, did cost segregation instead of straight line depreciation. So you get $300,000 of depreciation that you've taken during those 5 years. Now, when you go to sell it, yes, you do pay back 25%, which is $75K. But look at that 10,000 foot view. During that 5 years, you enjoyed $225,000 of tax losses. That's scot-free. That's gone. I mean, that's yours. All those savings were yours during that 5 years. You do not pay those back. That's as simple as it is. That's what I love. I love making sure everybody understands. It's not about the sale. You can't look 5-10 years in advance. You have to look every single year during ownership to really fully grasp the idea of how much you're saving across the board with everything. Oh, and there's something I had to ask my last time. Keep in mind, it's not 25% that you actually owe. It's whatever your tax rate is of that 25%, by the way. So if you take example, the 25%, let's say you owe back 75K and you're in a 30% tax bracket, you only owe 30% of that 25%. Does that make sense? Good. Okay. Okay. I always put this in just to prove my point that the IRS wants this. So this is the taken from the IRS Cost Segregation Audit Techniques Guide. Say it 3 times fast. I love this example because it's literally a book about cost segregation, what the IRS wants to see. The check, this is a checklist for us, but I have this book by my nightstand. I read 2 pages of it a night and I fall asleep like a baby. It's wonderful. I recommend it highly, guys. If you're looking for a new book, get this. It'll put you right out. But I always like putting this in because it shows the example. The IRS wants this done. All right. And we follow this word for word guide, line for line. This is a guidebook for us. We want to make sure that it's all done correctly, well done, and everybody comes out ahead and nobody has to pay the government. Yep. And that's what we do. 100% audit protection. Again, everybody's they cringe when they hear audit, but I love talking about it because we've we've had, I think 14 in the last 20 years, we've been involved in 14 audits with our clients, and they did not get audited because they had a cost segregation report. They were audited for other reasons, but the IRS said, oh, you had cost segregation. We would like to pull that report and see it. 14 times, 14 no changes. We follow the rules. We do everything exactly the way they want to see it. We do, physical site tours. We can do virtual site tours. We do photographic evidence, line measurements. We do absolutely everything they want to see that allows you to take away all of those tax benefits. And when I said virtual tour, we actually discovered during COVID, everybody was trying to think outside the box, hence why we're on a Zoom call so easily now. We've basically said, look, if we cannot send our engineer out, how are people going to save money on their taxes? Well, let's see if we can do this. So we found out that you can do a virtual tour, because essentially it's the exact same thing, except you are the one walking your own property with our engineers, either via camera, via Zoom, via FaceTime, via whatever. And then we will send you a thank you for so much for working with us, little box of treats. And it's 100% passable through the IRS, because we do the exact same thing across the board, except we're not physically boots on the ground walking it. And this actually works out really well for a lot of people that have, tenants that are a little uncomfortable. If they're 100% occupied, they have tenants that are a little uncomfortable having a stranger walk through their property. I know, hey, you guys want to do a virtual tour? No problem. And then earlier, Ray was telling you that we're a division of Madison Commercial Real Estate, and so you got to think of that as that's our umbrella, Madison Commercial Real Estate Services. Under that umbrella, we do Madison Specs, which I the cost segregation wing, which I personally think is the best, but I'm biased. Then there's Madison Title. We have a title insurance company. We have a 1031 exchange intermediary, Lease Probe, that goes through thousands upon thousands of documents per property purchase. The nice thing about this is we are 100% back office with a massive team, and it's enjoyable because we get to all work together and see the different sides of it. So we're knowledgeable on all different sides of it. And yeah, that's it in a nutshell. I probably went over. I don't even have a clock. There it is.
You have a few minutes for some questions, Brian? I know you covered just about everything, but
let me stop sharing. All right, ask away.
So I guess I'll kick off, and then as people formulate their questions, one of the ones that I have, and first of all, for those, most of you that wouldn't know this, but Brian's actually the one that's doing the cost segregation on our most current acquisition. So I try to bring people on the show that I trust and that I work with. So that's first and foremost. Brian, quick question. What is kind of the threshold for when a cost segregation study makes sense versus not, as it relates to the number of units, or at least a cost point of the acquisition?
I'll tell you what. So I'll give you my personal example. So I've done the largest building I've ever done was a 8-figure, like 42-story skyscraper in a metroplex. The smallest I've ever done is 1/2 of a duplex, which is how many units?
Oh, wow.
1 unit. Did it make, but you know what? Again, this whole thing is a tax strategy. Did it make sense for the client? Absolutely. He said he owed like $4,000 in taxes and he didn't want to pay it. And I was like, good for you. Let's do it. And, we did it. We worked the cost down to almost, at cost for him, and it worked out. He paid nothing in taxes, and he had enough left over to roll over to the next year, because cost segregation, again, remember the dam, it doesn't go away. It just keeps piling up, waiting for its opportunity. The threshold on the cost of the property, I've seen probably the lowest I would recommend doing is $100K. If you buy the property for $100K or more, it's doable. Again, guys, it's all based on your strategy. Like, do you want to pay taxes? Do you want to, move it down the line? You name it. Do the cost outweigh the benefits?
Wow, interesting. Add this to your myths, Brian. I always thought personally that it only made sense if it was a multifamily asset, and even then, maybe 10 or more for the cost associated with the study to make it worthwhile. So definitely add that one.
Oh, absolutely. No, I've probably done a handful just in the last week of just single family rental homes, like individuals, not portfolios. You guys, it's across the board. It's not, you can do retail, standalones, office buildings, renovated office. You can a hotel that's being changed into a multifamily property, which I've seen recently. I mean, it's across the board that you can do it as long as it's producing income for you and it's not a personal residence. You can do cost segregation on it. It's, sky's the limit.
Fantastic. Good. Any other questions, guys?
Yes. So if it's a duplex and you're renting one side out and you're living in the other one, can that be done?
That's actually the one I was talking about. This gentleman bought a duplex. He lives in one side and he rents out the other. Yeah, absolutely can be done.
Okay.
Because it's an income producing asset.
So that will involve the ADU as well then, I think, right? If you have ADU, like, it's a single family, and then some single family, they have the ADU unit, and it's very common. I'm in California. So can you do the cost seg on ADU then? You
absolutely can. Again, it's all based on if you have a property. Now, there are some tax incentives that if it's your personal residence and you rent it out for 14 days a year, technically you can do cost segregation on it because it's enough income produced throughout the year. A lot of people do Airbnbs. You can do cost segregation on an Airbnb, no problem. The side properties, like the backyard apartment scenario, absolutely do it on that. So can I ask you one question regarding the recapture? And I'm not sure if I understood 100%. And that's you were saying, so basically you are recapturing the 25% of the tax advantage that you have taken, and out of that you're paying 30% or whatever your tax bracket is, right? Okay. So how did you come up with the 25%? So that's the actual IRS cap amount. When you go to sell a property, the recapture cap, the maximum amount is 25% of the depreciation you've taken that you will owe back. But you don't owe back the 25%. You owe back your tax rate of that 25%. So let's say, I'm trying to think of flat examples. Let's say you only owe back 20% recapture, right? You took $100,000, 20% of that is $20,000. You're in the 25% tax rate, which means 25% of $20,000 is $5,000. That's how much you owe back. So it just keeps dropping. No, I understand that portion. The only thing I was getting a little hiccup is just like how, let's say if you took $100,000 as a depreciation, and then when you're doing the recapture year 5, your property has been appreciated too, right? Oh. It's a higher value plus the depreciation. So the recapture is like a little bit bigger than that. I don't know, in my mind at least. I got you. So one big key piece is the assets on the property. All the 5-year assets, if you sell the property after 5 years, you've depleted quite a bit of the life expectancy of those assets. That's how the percentages are able to drop a little bit more. Now, if you were to add more improvements into it and take advantage of those, then it might go up a little bit more because you're taking advantage of most of the improvements, like the accelerated depreciation on that. So it's really, the idea when it comes to recapture is to absolutely consult your CPA to see, based on what your plan is, what your formula is when you buy a property, how the recapture is going to affect the sale down the line.
Speaking of CPAs, Brian, does each individual limited partner have the ability to basically organize their depreciation the way they want? Obviously, it's a K1, right, that they kind of get, and from there. So some people, maybe for them, it makes sense to do a larger capture. Maybe others want to do some other method or strategy.
So one piece of it is, remember I was talking about different types of investors earlier. If you're investing through, another entity, IRA or 401k, you have that depreciation allocated based on your investment, your ownership, but you can't utilize it. You can't spread it out. That's a disadvantage on that side of it. If you are, investing and getting, I don't know, tremendous amounts of depreciation as an active investor, I mean, you can slide it across the board and take full advantage of it throughout whatever portfolio you want. Every single person does not have the same CPA. So you file your own individual tax returns. You get K1s from every property you invest with. So on those K1s, it actually tells you this is how much money you got from the property. This is how much you're allocated in depreciation. Now, one thing is if it's in, let's say, a syndication, which, an LLC bought this property with 50 investors allocated under it. Every investor gets a small percentage of whatever depreciation, based on their ownership, whatever depreciation there is. If you do straight line depreciation, everybody has to take straight line depreciation. If you do cost segregation, everybody has the option to do either cost segregation, which is spread out over the, you get the bulk of it years 1 through 6, 7, or bonus depreciation, where you can move all of that 5 and 15 year into year 1 based on your ownership.
So I
And
think
again,
sorry. I got a little bit confused here because I heard from somebody like, towards the end, you just capture all that depreciation that you're getting. And towards when you're selling the property, even whether you're LP or GP, right? So you're getting a huge chunk of money that returned back at that time. So at that time, you're going to be writing off because you have the depreciation in your hand. So that's going to offsetting your gains. But the question is now, is it like beneficial to do it that way, or like yearly depreciation that you're getting and the yearly you're writing off in your taxes?
Right. So again, this whole thing is a strategy. It comes down to, do you want to pay taxes on the income you've earned, even after improvements or appreciation or forced, appreciation is what I meant to say. Or do you want to offset like literally every bit of income you have throughout the ownership? And when you go to sell, you have to pay a little piece of it back. The key is, it comes down to how it's all a numbers game. When you go to sell it, depending on how much you bought it for, depending on how much you sold it for, how much capital gains go, you have to take that calculation under advisement for the recapture percentages. You can offset all of the recapture depreciation. You can offset all of the capital gains by doing a 1031 exchange. But you have to if it's a syndication, everybody has to sign off on the 1031 exchange. So there's so many different ways to either avoid depreciation recapture or offset chunks of it. But again, it all comes down to, what are the terms of the sale? What are, during your ownership, everything. But I will tell you, again, I'm strongly advising everybody, active real estate professional, if you invest in multiple properties, when you go to sell a property, the capital gains and the recapture depreciation that are owed can be offset with accelerated depreciation from other properties. So it's a game. It's $1 million billion game.
Thank you.
I have a follow-up question to Ray's question. So just so I can understand that really well. So for example, if you have 4 investors and then one of them has an IRA and they can't take that depreciation or accelerated depreciation, if they're not going to use that, can the other investors use that portion?
See, that is where your attorney really comes into play on the property. So people have asked me, what should I do? I've actually sent documents to attorneys saying this is what to do on the operating agreement, the PPM agreement. You do have the ability to, reallocate depreciation, but it has to be it has to be very legalized. Like it has to be in a contract, signed off by everybody involved, and spread across. And I've had
Oh,
people
okay.
doing that, not a problem. I have GPs that do not invest a dime of their own money. What they're doing is just acquiring the property and raising the funds and everything. And they, how do they get the depreciation if they're not putting money into it? Well,
Right.
the PPM, the operating agreement,
Okay.
reallocation, depreciation.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I have a question. This is kind of a little off, back to your what you can write off. I'm planning on buying a house with a dock later this year, and planning on renting the dock and to a boat and managing the boat. Would I be able to write off due cost segregation on that particular?
So with the boat as well?
Well, I'm planning on managing the boat. I don't recommend anybody buying a boat, charter it or rent it. It's unless you're using it unless you need to offset a whole bunch of high income, it is a loss every day of the week.
There you go. Man, I like that he's thinking in terms of the loss and gains and everything. I mean, it's
Hey, to my boss, I'm a loss every day of the week.
there you go. So yeah, the short answer is yes. I mean, when you buy the property, if that dock is included in the purchase price of your property, it's on site when you bought it. Absolutely, you can 100% appreciate it. It's all 15-year property because it is not stationary. It was built on top of the ground. It's 100%. I'm in Texas, guys, and we did that for a river house. He built
really?
He built a big stone staircase down to the river to be like a walk-in river access. And gosh, I think we found him like 50% and of the appreciation value. It was massive.
All right. Well, this is getting better and better then. Fantastic.
But again, it never hurts to find out. That's what I always make sure everybody knows. Like when we do an analysis for you on a property, we do it free of charge.
Okay.
If you want me to run that individual breakdown for your investors or you for other investments that you've done, I'll do that free of charge. Perfect. 100%. Want to make sure the goal is to beat my enemy, the IRS. Okay, guys? That is my goal in life. I want to retire happy about that. And then the IRS can come after me when I retire.
Yeah, well, you'll be on a boat in the Bahamas.
I'll be on a boat in the Bahamas.
Any other questions, guys?
Can you talk a little bit about the costs of the study?
Oh, sure. Really it comes down to, it's based on the size of the property.
Of course.
For single family rental homes, depending on if it's worth it for you or not, I think it's like $500 a study. For the giant skyscraper, it took my engineers about 4 days, 4 days to do. We charged $12,000.
Wow.
It's a one-time fee that lasts the entire ownership, guys. That's another thing. It's not an annual, monthly. It's a one-time fee because it's a one-time report for everything that you bought on the property.
I'm not sure if you mentioned this earlier, but what's like an average return on investment on this cost?
In terms of like
how much savings y'all get compared to the cost of the actual report?
Oh gosh. It's based on the property itself. Like you can, it could be 4 figures. It could be 5, 6, 7. I've seen as high as 8 figures. It's all based on the property itself, how much it was purchased for. So rule of thumb, I'll tell you this much, types of properties. Warehouse property, that's mainly just a shell of a building. That's going to be mostly 39-year. So you're not going to see as much you're able to accelerate on a warehouse unless it's like a production or manufacturing warehouse. The high-end manufactured housing communities, guys, everything is 5 and 15 year. There's very, very little 27.5 year. You're looking at 80 to 90% of your purchase price is allowed to be depreciated immediately.
But you're only talking about properties where the homes are owned by the park, right? Park-owned homes.
Not necessarily, because even if they're park-owned homes, the land based on the structures, you can actually depreciate the land portions of it for 15 years.
You can?
Absolutely.
I would be very interested in that since I just closed on a mobile home park.
Ah, there you go.
Look at that. I love it.
Nice.
But no,
I
I
didn't know I could do that because it's just land. I don't own any of the homes. So.
and a lot of people actually, so another part of this is we did a massive cost segregation study for a golf course. And you think to yourself, well, that's all land. But think of it as all of the landscaping equipment, specialty irrigation, the clubhouse, all of that stuff is able to be depreciated, even though it's just a big chunk of land with a bunch of green grass. And I mean, it was in Texas, so I guess it was a bunch of yellow grass. Yeah.
All right.
Cool, thanks.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? I think we got our money's worth today, Brian.
Oh,
For
yeah.
sure.
Again, guys, remember my goal. That is my 100% goal. I love talking about it.
All right, great. Thanks a lot, Brian. I appreciate it. Just want to